The theft in the night was quiet, too quiet. The farmer sat on his small porch, watching the stars above his field. The moonlight touched the rows of vegetables he had worked so hard to grow. Every day, he cared for them, watering, pulling weeds, keeping away animals. But lately, something strange was happening. Each morning, a few vegetables were gone, not eaten by animals, but taken carefully by hands. Tonight, he promised himself, he would stay awake, he would catch whoever was stealing. From his garden his shotgun rested by the door, though he hoped he would not need it. Hours passed slowly, the wind moved through the leaves, and the farmer's eyes grew heavy. Then he heard it, a soft rustle, different from the wind. Someone was moving among his crops. He stood quietly, careful not to make a sound. His heart beat faster as he stepped down into the field. The moon gave just enough light to see a shadow bent low near the rows of carrots. At first, he thought it was a child, but as he came closer, he saw the figure was thin, tall, and shaking. It was a woman, an alien woman. Her skin was pale and marked with strange patterns that glowed faintly in the dark. Her clothes were torn, barely covering her weak body. Her hands clutched at the vegetables, pulling them out as fast as she could. The farmer shouted, "Stop right there." The woman gasped, dropping the carrots, and turned toward him. Her eyes glowed softly, wide with fear. For a moment, she looked ready to run, but then her legs gave up, and she fell to her knees. She raised her hands, shaking, and begged, "Please, please, don't hurt me." The farmer lowered his shotgun but kept his distance. "Why are you stealing from me?" he demanded. The woman's voice broke as she whispered, "My children, they are hungry." Tears slid down her face. Catching the moonlight, she pressed her forehead to the dirt, begging for mercy. "I had no choice," she said. "They haven't eaten in 2 days." The farmer stared at her, shocked. He had heard rumors of strange aliens living in the woods, survivors of a war from far away. Most people said they were dangerous, untrustworthy, better left to starve. But here was one, not dangerous at all, only desperate. Her voice was weak, her body thinner than any human should be. For a moment, he felt anger. This was his garden, his hard work. But then he saw the way she trembled, how her hands still clutched at her stomach as if she had not eaten herself. The farmer lowered his voice, "Where are your children?" The alien woman shook her head quickly, as if afraid to answer. "They are hiding," she whispered. "If they hear your voice, they will run." "Please, I only wanted a few carrots, just enough to keep them alive. I will pay you back one day, I swear." The farmer took a slow breath. This was not what he expected. He thought he would catch a thief, a man stealing to sell at the market. Instead, he found a broken mother, begging for food. The silence stretched long. The only sound was the wind. Finally, the farmer said, "Stand up." The woman looked up at him with wide, glowing eyes, unsure if he meant to help her or hand her to the guards. The farmer's mind turned in circles. If he let her go, she might come again. If he called the guards, her children would starve. And if he helped her, he would be seen as a traitor. The night suddenly felt heavier. This was no simple theft. This was the beginning of something much bigger, and the farmer knew his life would never be the same again. Hungry eyes. The farmer could not sleep that night, even after the alien woman ran into the shadows, leaving the carrots on the ground. Her words stayed with him. "My children are hungry," she had said. Those words echoed in his ears again and again. He sat by the dying fire, staring into the flames. He told himself it wasn't his problem. She was a thief. She didn't belong here. The smart thing was to tell the guards in the morning. Yet his heart argued with his mind. He had seen the way she knelt in the dirt, her voice breaking, her eyes full of fear. It was not the face of a liar. The next day, the farmer tried to work in the fields. He carried water, pulled weeds, and tied up tall plants. But his eyes kept drifting to the woods at the edge of his land. Something in him wanted to know the truth. Were there really children waiting there? As the sun sank low, he made a choice. He filled a small basket with bread and a few old potatoes. Then he set out toward the trees, walking slowly, careful not to be seen by neighbors. The forest grew darker with every step, the sound of his boots crunching on dry leaves the only noise. He almost turned back, but then he remembered her voice, thin and broken. Finally, he found a path of footprints, small ones, leading deeper inside. He followed them until he saw a shape of a broken shelter made from scraps of metal and branches. Smoke rose weakly from a small fire. He hid behind a tree, watching. There she was, the alien woman, sitting by the fire with her head bowed, and there, his breath caught, were 3 children. They were thin, their faces pale, their clothes nothing more than rags, but their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, large and innocent. They were not dangerous. They were starving. One of the children coughed, the sound sharp and painful. The woman pulled him close, rocking him gently. She whispered something in her OWN language, words the farmer could not understand, but he didn't need to. He understood the meaning. It was the same any mother would whisper. It will be okay. The farmer stepped out from the shadows. The woman gasped, pulling her children behind her. Her glowing eyes widened with fear. You followed me, she whispered. Please, don't take them. They've done nothing. The farmer lifted the basket, setting it slowly on the ground. I didn't come to hurt you, he said, his voice calm. I just wanted to see if you were telling the truth. The children peeked from behind their mother's arms, their eyes locked on the basket of food. They didn't speak, but their hunger was written on their faces. It was in the way their lips trembled, the way they stared at the bread like it was treasure. The farmer pushed the basket closer with his boot. Take it, he said. The woman hesitated, as if it were a trick, but the children moved first, crawling forward and grabbing the bread with tiny hands. They tore it apart quickly, eating as if they feared it might disappear. The farmer watched silently, his chest tight. He had seen hunger before, but never like this. It was raw, desperate, painful to watch, and when the youngest child lifted his glowing eyes to him, crumbs on his lips, the farmer felt something stir inside him. Not anger, not fear, something else, something heavier. The woman whispered, why are you helping us? The farmer didn't answer right away. He only knew that the sight of those hungry eyes would never leave him, and he knew one more thing. This secret could not stay hidden forever. If the village discovered them, the children would not be shown mercy. As he turned back toward his farm, the night colder around him, the farmer realized he had stepped onto a path from which there was no return. The alien children were no longer strangers. They were faces burned into his heart, hungry eyes that now belonged to him, as much as his own land did. A dangerous choice. The farmer walked back to his house that night with heavy steps. The image of the children's glowing eyes stayed with him. They were not monsters, not thieves, not what the village rumors claimed. They were only hungry, weak, and too small to defend themselves. But his heart carried a new weight. He now had a secret that could destroy him if anyone found out. Helping aliens was forbidden. The guards had made it clear many times. Anyone caught hiding or feeding them would be punished as a traitor. He sat at his table, staring at the wooden surface, his hands still dirty from the soil. The choice was in front of him. He could report them and save himself, or he could keep helping them, risking everything. The next morning, he tried to work in his garden, but every time he bent to pick weeds, he saw the children's thin hands reaching for bread. Every time he filled his water bucket, he remembered the woman's weak voice. My children are hungry. The farmer knew he had already made his choice. His heart had decided long before his mind. That evening, he packed more food, apples, bread, a small piece of cheese. He walked into the woods again, careful, silent, his eyes watching for neighbors or guards. When he reached the shelter, the children ran to him, their small feet quick on the ground. They smiled for the first time, glowing eyes bright with joy. The farmer felt something he hadn't felt in years, warmth. The alien woman stood back, watching, her hands trembling. You shouldn't come here, she whispered. If they see you, they will call you traitor. The farmer shrugged. Let them call me what they want. I can't watch children starve. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she gave a small nod. My name is Sarah, she said quietly. I was once a teacher, before the war took everything. She told him how her world had been destroyed by soldiers from another empire, how she fled with her children in a broken ship, only to crash on Earth's edges, how she had hidden in the woods, stealing scraps, never daring to ask for help. As she spoke, her voice cracked, and tears filled her glowing eyes. The farmer listened, silent but firm. He understood pain, loss, hunger, maybe not her kind, but enough to see the truth in her words. But danger was already close. Back in the village, whispers had begun to spread. Food was missing, and tracks had been seen near the farmer's land. The villagers didn't know the truth yet, but suspicion grew like fire on dry grass. That night, as the farmer returned home, he saw 2 neighbors talking near his fence. They looked at him strangely, their voices low and sharp. One of them said, "Strange things happen near your farm, don't they?" The farmer forced a smile, pretending not to notice, but inside his chest, his heart pounded. When he entered his house, he shut the door quickly and leaned against it. The choice he had made was already shaping his future. Every trip to the woods would be more dangerous now, but when he thought of the children smiling, eating bread with glowing eyes bright as stars, he knew he could not stop. He whispered to himself, so be it. The dangerous choice was made, and from this moment, there was no turning back. The farmer had chosen compassion over safety, kindness over fear, but in doing so, he had also chosen a path filled with shadows of betrayal, suspicion, and danger that waited just beyond the trees, and he knew, one wrong step, one pair of eyes watching him at the wrong time, would bring everything crashing down. Whispers in the village. The farmer thought he could hide his secret forever, but secrets have a way of slipping through cracks, and in a small village, whispers travel faster than the wind. At first, it was only small talk at the well, a neighbor saying, "Strange, food has gone missing again." Another replied, "Tracks in the dirt, not like any animal I've seen." The farmer kept his head down, but every word felt like a stone pressing on his chest. Days passed, and the whispers grew. Children repeated stories they had overheard. Mother says aliens live in the forest. Father says they steal food at night. The farmer clenched his jaw, pretending not to care, but every time he looked toward the woods, fear gnawed at him. He tried to be careful. He carried food to Sarah and her children in baskets of hay. Sometimes he hid bread inside sacks of grain. Other times he tucked carrots under old tools. The children smiled brighter now, their cheeks less hollow, their small hands warm when they touched his. But happiness was always shadowed by fear. One evening, as he walked back from the forest, he felt eyes on him. He turned quickly, but the path behind was empty. Still, the feeling didn't leave. Someone was watching. Someone had seen. The next day in the market, he heard his name. Two men stood near the fruit stand, their voices sharp. "His field is always full, yet food goes missing. Doesn't it make you wonder?" The farmer pretended to study apples, but sweat gathered on his neck. Back in the woods, Sarah noticed his troubled face. "You are in danger because of us," she whispered. "You should not come anymore." The farmer shook his head. "Danger or not, I won't let your children starve." Her glowing eyes softened, filled with tears she didn't let fall. For a moment, she reached for his hand but pulled back, afraid even of gratitude. That night, the whispers turned louder. A group of villagers gathered outside the tavern, their torches lighting the dark. One shouted, "The guards must search every home. We will not be thieves' victims anymore." The farmer stood at a distance, blending into the crowd. His stomach tightened, his breath short. If the guards searched his house, would they find signs? The footprints on his land? The empty baskets? He hurried home, his mind racing. Inside his small kitchen, he sat at the table. He thought of the alien children laughing with crumbs on their lips. He thought of Sarah's shaking voice when she begged for mercy. Could he abandon them now? The choice was no longer only his. The village was closing in, and somewhere among his neighbors, he felt the sharp eyes of someone who already suspected the truth. The next morning, a knock shook his door. It was not gentle. It was heavy, demanding. The farmer's heart pounded. When he opened it, two guards stood there, spears in hand. Their leader said, "There are rumors of food theft. We are searching the farms, starting with yours." The farmer's mouth went dry. Behind him, the kitchen seemed too small, too filled with shadows. He forced a smile, stepping aside. "Search, if you must," he said, his voice steady though fear roared inside him. As the guards entered, the farmer prayed silently. If they found anything, Sarah and her children would be doomed, and so would he. The whispers in the village had become more than whispers now. They had become footsteps at his door, and the noose of suspicion was tightening fast. The betrayal. The guards searched every corner of the farmer's small house. They lifted baskets, opened cupboards, and checked the cellar. The farmer stood silently, his hands behind his back, hiding his trembling fingers. Every creak of wood, every shuffle of boots made his heart pound harder. When they found nothing, the guard leader narrowed his eyes. "You work hard, farmer," he said slowly, "yet you always have plenty, maybe too much." The farmer forced a smile. "Hard work feeds a man better than gossip." The guards left, but their suspicious glances burned like fire on his skin. That night, the farmer went into the woods again. Sarah was waiting with fear in her glowing eyes. "They came to your home, didn't they?" she whispered. The farmer nodded. "They found nothing." For now, the alien children clung to their mother's torn clothes, staring at him with trust. The farmer felt the weight of their fragile hope pressing on him, but danger was already closer than he realized. A man from the village, tall and sharp-eyed, had followed him in secret. He watched from the shadows as the farmer handed bread to the alien children, his face twisted in disgust. He turned back toward the village, eager to spread what he had seen. The next morning, the farmer noticed it, the way neighbors looked at him. Too long, too cold. He heard whispers stop when he walked by. He knew then. Someone had betrayed him. That evening, as he returned from the market, he found the tall man waiting near his fence. The man smirked. "I saw you feeding them in the woods. What will the guards say when I tell them?" The farmer's blood turned cold. "Please," he said carefully, "they are only children. They've done no harm." The man spat on the ground. "Children? They're not ours. They're not even human. You shame this village by helping them." The farmer clenched his fists, fighting the urge to strike. "Eat him instead," he said. "What do you want?" The man's eyes gleamed with greed. "Half your harvest this season, and I keep my mouth shut." It was blackmail, betrayal dressed as business. The farmer's jaw tightened. He wanted to refuse, but the thought of guards dragging Sarah and her children away was too much, so he gave a short nod. That night, the farmer sat by the fire, staring at the flames. His heart was heavy with anger and shame. He had worked his land with sweat and pain, and now half of it would be stolen, not by strangers, but by his own neighbor. And still, he had no choice. If he fought back, Sarah would be lost in the woods. Sarah noticed his silence. "You carry a burden," she said softly. The farmer shook his head. "Not just mine. The whole village will turn against me if the truth comes out, but I won't stop bringing food." Sarah touched his arm gently, her voice trembling. "Why? Why risk everything for us?" The farmer looked at the children sleeping by the fire, their glowing eyes closed in peace. He answered simply, "Because no one else will." But even as he said it, the farmer knew the betrayal was not finished. The tall man had tasted power over him, and men like that never stopped with one demand. Soon, he would ask for more, and when he did, the farmer would be forced to make a choice again, to give up everything he owned, or to stand and fight. The fire crackled in the dark. The alien children dreamed of safety, but outside their fragile shelter, betrayal spread like poison, and the farmer knew the storm was coming, a storm he could no longer avoid. The days grew darker for the farmer. Each morning he worked his fields, but the joy of harvest was gone. Half of everything he grew now went to the greedy neighbor. It was not enough food for the village, nor enough to satisfy his own pride, but he stayed silent, for Sarah and her children still lived, still breathed. Yet silence could not last forever. One evening, as the farmer carried a basket of food into the woods, he saw torchlight far behind him. He froze, his heart racing. Voices carried on the night air, guards patrolling, closer than ever before. The whispers of the village had turned into fire, and the fire was coming for him. In the shelter, Sarah rose quickly when she saw his face. "They are coming?" she asked, her voice tight. The farmer nodded, setting down the basket. "We don't have much time. They'll search the woods soon. If they find you..." His voice broke. He couldn't finish. The alien children pressed close to their mother, fear glowing in their eyes. Sarah touched the farmer's arm. "You should leave us. Save yourself before it's too late." But the farmer shook his head, firm. "I will not leave. If being human means letting children die, then I want no part of it." That night, he went home and made a decision. He pulled his old shotgun from the wall, cleaned it, loaded it. He lit no fire, spoke no words. He only sat in the dark, waiting. Outside, the village was alive with anger. Men muttered in the tavern, women whispered at wells. Soon, the guards would return, and this time they would not leave empty-handed. At dawn, the knock came, hard, heavy, final. The farmer opened the door to see 3 guards and the greedy neighbor standing proudly among them. The neighbor smirked. "I told you he was hiding something. Check the woods. You'll see." The guards pushed forward, but the farmer blocked the door. "No," he said firmly, his shotgun resting in his hands. The leader narrowed his eyes. "Step aside, farmer. We'll search every inch of this land." The farmer stood tall, his voice steady. "You will not take them, not while I draw breath." The standoff was sharp as steel. The neighbor laughed cruelly. "Listen to him, protecting monsters. He has betrayed us all." The guards raised their weapons, the air tense, but the farmer did not flinch. I worked this land with my own hands, I bled for it, and I will bleed again before I let you drag away starving children. Call me traitor if you wish, but I will not step aside. Behind him, the fire crackled quietly. Inside him, fear roared, but he buried it deep. For the first time, he felt no shame, no hesitation. This was his stand, and he would not bend. The guards hesitated, glancing at one another. The neighbor barked, "Cowards! Take him down." But even they knew, a desperate man with nothing left to lose was more dangerous than an army. The leader lowered his spear slightly, his voice low. "You are making a mistake, farmer." The farmer's eyes burned with fire. "Maybe, but it is mine to make." For a moment, silence filled the air. The tension could break at any second. A fight, blood on the soil, or something else entirely. The farmer did not know, but his stand had been made. He would not betray Sarah, not now, not ever. And in that moment, though the night still threatened, the farmer's spirit burned brighter than the torches outside his door. One man standing, unbroken, against the weight of a whole village. A new dawn. The guards stood tense outside the farmer's door, their spears lowered slightly, but their eyes sharp and ready. The greedy neighbor shouted again, "Arrest him, he hides aliens, I saw it with my own eyes." But the guards did not move yet. Something in the farmer's stance, something in the fire of his words, made them hesitate. Before anyone could act, a sound broke through the tense silence. A child's cough, weak, ragged, painful. It came from the edge of the woods, carried by the wind. The guards turned, startled. From the shadows, Sarah stepped forward, holding her smallest child in her arms. The other two clung to her dress, their glowing eyes wide with fear. Gasps spread among the villagers who had gathered. For many, it was their first time seeing aliens up close. They expected monsters, claws, sharp teeth, but what they saw instead was a thin mother with trembling hands and children too weak to stand. The greedy neighbor pointed at them, spitting, "See. Proof. They are thieves, leeches, take them away before they poison us all." But before the guards could move, the smallest child in Sarah's arms raised a trembling hand. A soft glow spread from his tiny palm. The light touched one of the guards, whose arm had been scarred and stiff for years. Before everyone's eyes, the scar faded, the skin healed, and the guard flexed his hand in shock. A ripple of awe spread through the crowd. The guard stepped back, confused. The neighbor shouted, "It's a trick. A demon's trick." But no one listened. The villagers could see the truth. These children were not a danger. They carried gifts, not weapons. The farmer stepped forward, his voice steady but strong. "Look at them. Are these the monsters you fear? Are these the enemies you wish to destroy? They are only hungry children, and this woman, a mother who begs only for food. If compassion is betrayal, then I am guilty. But if kindness still means something, then stand with me now." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. The villagers shifted, their anger cooling into shame. Even the guards lowered their spears completely. One finally said, "They are no threat, we will not harm them." The neighbor's face twisted with rage. He shouted, "You fools! You'll regret this, they will ruin us all." But his words fell empty. No one stood with him. He spat on the ground and stormed away, his shadow shrinking into the night. Sarah's glowing eyes filled with tears as she looked at the farmer. "You risked everything," she whispered, "for us." The farmer gave a tired smile. "No, I only did what anyone should do." The children stepped closer, their hands small and warm as they held his. The smallest whispered something in their language. Sarah translated softly, tears falling. "He says, you are family now." The farmer's chest tightened. He looked around at the villagers, who now stood in uneasy silence. The truth was plain. The world had changed that night. Fear had been replaced by understanding, suspicion by compassion. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight touched the fields. The farmer walked back toward his house, Sarah and her children beside him. The villagers watched but did not stop them. Some even lowered their heads in quiet respect. The storm had passed, and no more storms would surely come. For now, there was peace. For now, there was a beginning. The farmer knew his life would never be the same. But as he glanced at the glowing eyes of the children who now smiled with hope, he also knew he wouldn't want it any other way. A new day had come, not just for him, not just for Sarah, but for everyone who had chosen kindness over fear. And under that rising sun, the world felt just a little brighter. Shadows beyond the village. For a few weeks, life in the village changed. Sarah and her children were no longer ghosts hiding in the forest, they walked in daylight now. Though carefully, some villagers still avoided them, whispering in corners, but others offered small kindness. An old blanket, a loaf of bread, a place by the fire. The farmer's fields grew strong, watered by rain and warmed by sun, and for the first time in years, laughter echoed in his home, children's voices, soft and strange but full of joy, filled the empty rooms. Sarah often worked beside him, weeding rows, carrying water. Though her hands were thin, her spirit grew brighter each day. But peace is fragile, and shadows never sleep for long. One evening, as the farmer mended a fence, he saw a rider approach, a guard from the capital, armored and stern. Behind him rode others, carrying banners marked with the empire's seal. The villagers' whispers had reached further than expected. The kingdom now wanted answers. The captain dismounted, his voice hard. "We have heard reports of alien survivors. Our orders are clear. All outsiders must be taken for questioning. If they resist, they will be eliminated." The farmer's stomach dropped. He stood tall, though fear gnawed at him. "These are no enemies, they are children, a mother, nothing more." The captain's eyes were cold. Law does not bend for sympathy. That night, the village gathered again. The farmer spoke to them with fire in his voice. "You saw with your own eyes. They are no threat. Will you let strangers from the capital decide our future? Or will you stand with me again?" The villagers murmured, torn between fear and loyalty. Some nodded firmly, remembering the child's healing light. Others looked away, afraid of the empire's wrath. Sarah listened in silence, her hands gripping her children close. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "If they come for us, I will not run. We are tired of running." Her words carried pain but also courage. The farmer's chest tightened with respect. She was no longer the trembling thief he had found in the night. She was something stronger. The next morning, the capital guards marched into the village. They expected silence, obedience, fear, but instead, they found the villagers standing together, the farmer at the front, shotgun in hand, Sarah and her children at his side. One of the guards sneered, "Step aside, farmer, this is not your fight." But the farmer's voice was iron. "It became my fight the night I saw hungry children in my garden, and it will remain my fight until my last breath." The villagers raised their tools, hoes, shovels, hammers, not weapons, but in their hands, symbols of unity. Even the guards from the village stood back, unwilling to turn against their own. For a tense moment, the two sides faced each other. Then the smallest alien child stepped forward. He lifted his glowing hand. A gentle light spread, touching even the hardest faces. The captain of the capital forces blinked, unsettled. For a second, he hesitated, long enough for doubt to crack his certainty. The farmer's words cut the air, sharp and unyielding. "You came looking for enemies, but all you will find here is family." The standoff did not end in blood that day. The capital guards left with threats, but no prisoners. They would return. The farmer knew the shadows beyond the village were not gone, but for now, the dawn still held. As the sun rose, Sarah stood beside him, her children's glowing eyes reflected the light, and though danger still lingered, the farmer felt no fear, because he was no longer standing alone, and together, they were stronger than any empire's shadow. The storm approaches. The village returned to quiet after the capital guards left, but the quiet was uneasy, like the silence before thunder. Everyone knew the empire would not forget, they would come back, and next time, they would not leave without blood. The farmer worked his fields with Sarah at his side. The children ran between the rows, their laughter soft and strange. For a moment, it felt almost like peace, but every time the farmer looked at the horizon, he imagined soldiers marching, banners waving, the sound of steel and fire. At night, he could not sleep. He sat on the porch, shotgun across his knees. The stars above were bright, but they gave him no comfort. His thoughts were heavy. How long can we stand against an empire? One evening, Sarah sat beside him, her glowing eyes gentle. "You are afraid," she said quietly. The farmer gave a tired smile. "I'd be a fool if I wasn't." She looked at her children sleeping nearby, their small chests rising and falling. "Fear is not weakness," she whispered. "It means you care for something, and when you care, you fight harder." Her words sank deep into him, but still, he worried for the villagers. Would they stand again when the soldiers returned, or would fear break their unity? The answer came sooner than he expected. 2 weeks later, a messenger arrived on horseback, his clothes torn from hard travel. He carried a letter stamped with the empire's seal. The mayor read it aloud in the square. All aliens are to be surrendered to the capital at once. Failure to comply will be treated as rebellion, punishable by fire and steel. Gasps spread through the crowd. Some villagers trembled, others shouted in anger. The farmer's jaw tightened as he looked at Sarah. She stood calm, though her eyes betrayed sadness. I told you, she whispered, we are tired of running. If they come, we will face them, but not Everyon. Agreed. The greedy neighbor, the same man who had betrayed the farmer before, raised his voice. Are we to die for them, for strangers who bring war to our doorstep? Fear rippled through the villagers. Voices rose, some for Sarah, some against. The unity they once shared now cracked like dry earth. The farmer stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. They are not strangers anymore. You have seen their hearts, you have seen their gifts. If we give them up, we give up our own humanity. His words silenced some, but not all. That night, the village split. Half swore to stand with the farmer, half whispered of surrender. The farmer knew the Empire would use this division like a blade. Later, as the moon rose, Sarah sat by the fire with him. Her voice was soft, but her words strong. My people once had a saying, when the storm approaches, the tree that bends survives, but the tree that breaks dies. The farmer looked at her. And which are we? She met his eyes, glowing like starlight. We are the tree that bends, but even bending, we will not fall. The next morning, smoke rose on the horizon. The Empire was coming. Drums echoed faintly in the wind. The storm was no longer far away, it was here. The final battle. The morning air was heavy with smoke. From the hills came the sound of drums, steady and cruel. The Empire's soldiers marched in rows, their armor shining, banners snapping in the wind. The villagers gathered at the edge of the fields, their faces pale. Some held tools, some only empty hands, but their eyes turned to the farmer, waiting. He stood tall, shotgun in his grip. Beside him, Sarah held her children close, their glowing eyes wide but steady. Fear moved through the crowd like a cold wind. The greedy neighbor stepped forward, shouting, it is over, give them up before we are all destroyed. But his words fell flat this time. The villagers had seen too much. They had felt the alien child's healing light, and they remembered the farmer's stand. The Empire's captain rode forward on a black horse. His voice was sharp as steel. By order of the crown, surrender the outsiders, or your village will burn. The farmer's jaw tightened. He raised his voice, not just to the captain, but to everyone. You see children, I see family, and I will not hand them over, not to you, not to anyone. The villagers cheered, some loudly, some only with trembling voices, but together, their sound rose like thunder. The captain sneered, raising his hand, then you will fall with them. The soldiers advanced, boots shaking the earth. The farmer lifted his shotgun, ready, but before blood could be spilled, one of Sarah's children stepped forward, the youngest, his small hands glowing with light. He placed his palms to the ground. A wave of brightness rippled out like fire across the soil. The soldiers staggered back, their weapons trembling in their hands. Not burned, not broken, but unable to strike. Their anger melted into confusion, their strength into hesitation. The villagers gasped, awe spreading through them. The greedy neighbor tried to scream, it's witchcraft. But no one listened. All eyes were on the child, standing small but unafraid. His glow was not of war, but of life. The farmer's voice rang out, you see now, these children carry gifts, not curses. Strike them down, and you strike down hope itself. The soldiers hesitated, their captain's face dark with fury. He shouted, attack. But his men did not move. Some lowered their spears, others stepped back. They had seen the truth, and the truth was stronger than orders. The captain raged, but even he could not stand alone. He turned his horse with a snarl and rode away, his banners retreating into the smoke. The storm had broken, and the village still stood. When the last soldier was gone, the villagers erupted in cries of relief. Some wept, some embraced. The farmer lowered his shotgun, his hands shaking now that the danger had passed. Sarah stepped close, her eyes glowing with tears. You saved us, she whispered. The farmer shook his head, his voice rough. No, we saved each other. The children pressed against him, their warmth chasing away the cold. The villagers gathered, no longer divided. They had faced the Empire and survived, not with blades, but with unity. The farmer looked at Sarah, at her children, at the faces of his neighbors, and for the first time, he believed this was not the end of their story, it was the Beginning of something greater. As the sun broke through the smoke, a new dawn rose over the fields. The village stood together, stronger than before, and in the farmer's heart, one truth burned bright: compassion was stronger than fear, and no empire could ever take that away.